crazy happened last year. It was a weekend, and I went out to a couple of bars with some friends. We were in the city, and started the night at a restaurant before going to one bar and then another. Each place that we went was very busy with it being a weekend. People were pretty much everywhere. The last bar of the night that we were at, we arrived at probably about 11 o'clock or so. The dinner was pretty well set by about 11 o'clock or so, quite the night. I was with my friends hanging out and drinking. After being there for about an hour or so, I remember that I was standing kind of near the bar and my friends. That's when a man approached me from the side. He came right up to me and said that he had to talk to me. The guy seemed angry, but I didn't know why. I asked him what was up. He told me. Instead of talking to me though, the guy actually shoved me. I was really confused. The guy didn't seem like just some random angry drunk shoving me for no reason. He seemed to have a legitimate problem with me. I asked him what his problem was, but the guy just started cursing at me and walking towards me again. This time I wanted to fight him, and I took a step towards him. However, my friends saw this and stepped in. They stopped the man and me from reaching each other. The man ended up turning around and walking away to another part of the bar. My friends asked me what that was all about, and I told them that I had no idea. I did not know who the man was or why he was seemingly so angry at me. He had said he needed to talk to me, but apparently he just wanted to fight for some reason. So, that was what you said you wanted to use your magic for. I looked around but no longer saw the man and figured that he left, so I went back to hanging out with my friends near the bar area. Another hour or so went by and we still didn't see the man or anything. We then decided to leave. My friends and I walked out of the bar, and we sort of split up at that point. There were 5 of us, and 3 of my friends took an Uber together. My other friend walked back to his apartment downtown because it was pretty close by. I lived the other direction, so I was going to get a different Uber. After leaving the bar, I waited with my friends for them to get their Uber, and then I ordered one as well. Theirs came before mine, and when they left, I noticed that the guy who tried to fight me earlier was outside. He was standing on the sidewalk to the left of me about 50 feet away. I'm not sure if he had been there and I hadn't noticed because of my friends, or if he had just got there. Either way, he was here now. And just after I noticed him, he started walking over to me. I didn't want to fight this guy, and I just wanted to go home. So I turned and started walking away. After a few moments, I looked back and saw the guy walking after me, and he was walking extremely fast. So then I just started to run. I took off and sprinted down the sidewalk away from him. He started to run after me. However, I was much faster than him, it appeared. I continued to run and I soon made it several blocks away. I could barely see the guy. I turned again and kept running until I lost him completely. Then I finally stopped, caught my breath, and called another ride home. I wouldn't be able to take the other Uber that I had ordered previously. I was left extremely confused about the whole thing, and I'm still confused. I think that maybe the guy got me confused with somebody else, and he must have been really mad at this person, whoever he thought I was, because I can't really think of any reason why he would be angry at me. This is something that happened back when I was in college. I was a senior at the university, and like most college kids, my friends and I liked to go out to the bars on weekends. I lived in a house with 3 other girls, and we were all good friends. On one particular weekend, I had a lot of studying to do, and I was not going to be going out, but all 3 of my roommates were. They really wanted me to go, but I just had a lot to do, and I told them that I would go out with them the next weekend. So they left without me, and they met some of our other friends at one of the many bars just off of campus. And I was upstairs in my bedroom studying, and I knew that I would be up late anyways with my work, so I told my friends that if they needed rides, I would be able to drive them. As the night went on, I got a Snapchat from my roommate Ashley at probably about 10 o'clock. She said that there was some creepy guy following her around the bar. I asked her if she wanted to leave, and she said that she did not want to go yet, so I kept working. I didn't hear from her for several more hours, but a little after midnight she called me. I picked up the phone and right away Ashley seemed to be a little bit drunk. However, she said that they were at a different bar now and the same man was still following her around. She said that he was really creepy and asked if I could give her a ride home now. "Wah, wah, wah," said Ashley. The woman, who was apparently naked, sat on the couch by the fireplace. I said yes, and then we hung up and I left to go to the bar. It was maybe a 5-minute drive and was pretty close by. The bar that Ashley was at now was in downtown of the small city our college was located in. I parked my car on the side of the road up the street and then went inside the bar. It was very busy, with it being a weekend and stuff. I looked around trying to find my friends. I saw some people that I knew, but not the specific friends that I was looking for. It was very quiet. The night was dark and silent, and the stadium was quiet. But after making my way in a little bit, I was finally able to see one of my roommates. However, it wasn't Ashley. This was Molly, and I asked her if she knew where Ashley was. Molly said that Ashley had left. She also mentioned that some creepy guy kept staring at her and stuff. I asked her if she knew where Ashley had gone, but she said no. So I then tried calling Ashley, but she didn't pick up the phone. I was a little bit worried because I didn't know where she was, especially with the fact that some creepy guy seemed to be following her around. I tried calling her again as well as texting her, but she didn't respond right away. So I left the bar to try to look for her. I thought that maybe she went to another bar that we would go to sometimes. There were about 4 or 5 that we often went to in the city, but I really didn't know. I left the bar and then walked down the sidewalk at first, and I didn't see her. There were not many people out on the sidewalks, so I started walking down one, just looking around. I tried calling her again, but she still didn't answer, and so I got frustrated because I was just sitting there in the dark, finding nothing. I remember that I turned a corner and started going down another sidewalk. I was walking very quickly and going towards another bar, but I was also going in the direction of where we lived. There was also a slim chance that maybe she tried walking back home. It would take probably 30 or 40 minutes to walk back to our house, but it was possible. So, after going about another block in that direction, I actually saw her. She was way up ahead, and I noticed that walking behind her a ways was a man. I went faster, and I basically started jogging. When I got within a close enough distance, I started yelling her name. She heard it and turned around. When she did, the man stopped and turned around as well. After that, he started walking down a different street. I ran over to Ashley, and I told her that I would give her a ride. We started walking back to my car. On the way back, though, the man returned. He started trailing us, sort of a far ways back, but was still there. Ginger. Ashley said that he had been following her all night to multiple different bars. We walked quickly and were able to make it back to the street my car was on. After getting inside, I drove Ashley home, and then I went back to pick everybody else up and give them a ride. Ashley said that her phone had died, so she left the bar to walk home because she couldn't contact anyone. I'm really glad that I was able to find her. The guy seemed really determined to follow her wherever she went. I'm not sure what would have happened if Ashley had tried to walk the whole way home. I'm a female, and I used to work at a bar as a bartender several years ago. I did it for about a year, and I worked at a place that would often get really busy. There were a lot of regulars that would come in as well. I got to know some of the usual customers, and overall, I enjoyed the job. Towards the end of my time working there, an event took place, though, that ultimately made me quit. It all started a few weeks prior to the event. Like I mentioned before, after working there for a while, I picked up on many regular customers. I would recognize faces and talk to some of the customers that would sit at the bar. There was one guy that I noticed who would come in a lot. I'm not sure the first time that he was there, but I know that he started coming in very frequently. He didn't say anything to me the first few times. I know that because I remember asking him what he wanted, but his head. He was never with anybody else, so he would just sit at the end of the bar by himself. I also started to notice that he was often just staring at me. This was not a big deal, until after noticing him several times over the course of a few weeks. and he did start talking to me. He started to sort of hit on me in a pretty creepy way. So I went in. I was not too bothered though, but we started getting complaints from other customers as well. Apparently he had made some other people in the bar uncomfortable several times by staring at them or talking to them and apparently saying creepy things. I know that he got asked to leave the bar at least once, maybe twice, and he did leave, so I figured that he was just a creepy guy. One night he came in again and was sitting at the end of the bar. I noticed him staring at me once more, but this time he waved me over. I walked over to him, and I just remember him asking me to come over to his place when I got off or something like that. I said no, and when the guy cursed at me after that, I told him to leave. He got up and left the bar at that point. Then I went back to work. That did not seem like a very unusual event, given the guy's track record. I remember even thinking that we should probably ban the guy or something. He rarely if ever bought anything, and he only seemed to cause problems, but for the rest of my shift, I didn't see him. I got off later that night when we closed. After leaving the bar, I was able to walk home from work, so I started going back. I had an apartment just a few blocks away, and it would take me maybe about 10 minutes. Things were very quiet now, and when I got back to my apartment building, I went up to the second floor where my place was. However, when I entered my hallway, I saw the man from the bar standing right in front of my door. I noticed him about the same time that he saw me. We both looked at each other, and my first reaction was to turn around and go back. I saw the man starting to walk after me. I quickly went to the stairs and went down them to the first floor as fast as I could. By this point, I was running, and after going downstairs, I sprinted right out of the building. When I got outside, though, I realized that the man did not follow me out. I felt better, but I also realized that he was probably just going to stay in front of my apartment door, knowing that I would have to return because I lived there. I did not know how this guy even knew where I lived. I started walking down the sidewalk back towards the bar. It was closed now, but I wasn't really sure where else to go. After calming down though and coming to my senses, I called the police and told them about what happened. They said they would send an officer to come to my apartment, so I walked around the quiet streets, waiting for a while. When the police officer got there, we went into my apartment building. After getting to my floor, we saw that the man was still there. When he noticed us though, he started walking away. The officer told him to stop, and the guy did. I remember the guy telling the police officer that he was trying to go to his friends. He claimed that it was an honest mistake and he must have been at the wrong door, but when he was asked what his friend's name was, he said he couldn't remember. The guy ended up getting told that he had to leave and not come back, so he did. I was then able to get inside of my apartment, but I was really worried that the man would return. He must have followed me home without me knowing at one point. I don't know how else he would have known my address. The next time I was at work, I told my boss about it, and he agreed to ban the guy from the bar. Apparently, he came in one time that I was not working and they banned him. So luckily for me, I did not see him for the rest of the time that I worked there. Still, I decided to get another job a short time later. I also moved out of my apartment when the lease was up and moved to a different one, so hopefully I never see that creepy guy again. This happened last fall. I went to a local bar to watch a football game with my friend Garrett. There was a big game that we wanted to see, and I went to the bar and met him there. The bar was very crowded with lots of other people, probably there to watch the game as well. We were luckily able to get an open place to sit at a table. Garrett and I ordered some food and we were watching the game and talking. I remember that my wallet fell out of my pocket at one point, so I put it on the table, and we were at this round table and Garrett and I had positioned our chairs to get a good view of the game. So because of this, I wasn't really paying the greatest attention to my wallet. And in the crowded bar, a guy came up and tried to steal it. Garrett, luckily I noticed just in time. The guy who was kind of skinny but had a lot of tattoos came over, and I sensed him just standing next to our table. When I turned around, I saw him holding my wallet. After noticing me, he dropped it. and the guy quickly walked away. I knew that he didn't work there or anything, and he didn't offer any kind of explanation. I yelled at him, asking what he was doing, but he didn't answer and just kept going away. The guy was looking at the wallet as he put it away. The guy quickly disappeared into the crowd of people standing around by the bar. I put my wallet back in my pocket and made sure that it wouldn't fall out. The guy must have seen my wallet sitting there and that Garrett and I were facing the other direction. Still, I could tell that he was standing near us before he tried to take it. A little while later though, maybe 30 minutes or so, the guy came back. He was just standing around by us again. I looked over and saw him just by our table. I asked him what he wanted. The guy just gave me a dirty look and then sort of walked away. He was definitely very suspicious. A while after that, I did notice the guy standing a ways away and looking at me. He was still giving me a dirty look. I did my best to just ignore him after that, although if he did decide to come back over to us, I was going to give him a piece of my mind, but he didn't. A while later, the game ended, and many of the people started to leave the bar. Garrett and I were going to leave and go our separate ways, and we walked out and there was a parking lot for the bar, to the side of it. When we walked out there, I noticed the same guy again. He was standing right outside of my car next to it. When Garrett and I saw him, we had a bad feeling. I didn't know what this guy's plans were. I was parked kind of in the back corner of the parking lot, and I just didn't want to go near the guy. Instead, I went to Garrett's car with him. I sat inside Garrett's car and we talked about the situation. We were hoping that the man would just leave, and from where we were, we could not see my vehicle. So eventually I decided that I would just go walk over and ask the guy to leave if he was still there. If he chose to try to fight me or something, then whatever. So I got out of Garrett's car and walked over to mine. When I did not see the guy. It seemed as though he had actually left. I went to my driver's door and started to open it. That's when I just heard the sound of somebody approaching. I quickly shut the door and locked it, and then saw the man arrive at my driver's window. He tried opening my door and entering my car, and when it wouldn't open, he started banging on the windows. I quickly backed out and then left, leaving him standing in the parking lot. I went home and called Garrett and told him all about it. That was one of my craziest bar moments for sure. I don't know who that guy even was, and I don't know why he kept messing with me. Damn it! I'm a former bartender. I used to be one of the main bartenders at this smaller place on a corner. It was at the edge of the city, and I really enjoyed working there. The bar was pretty cool and had lots of fun pictures on the wall and stuff. So one night, I was all by myself. It was a quiet night, and we had just got a few people. As it got later, I was the only person inside the entire bar. But then, a man soon entered. He was wearing this mask over his head. It was either of a celebrity who I didn't know or just a random person, but I didn't recognize it, and it was basically a full fake head mask. This was a creepy enough sight with it not being any time near Halloween and the man walking in alone. The guy didn't say anything and walked up to one of the stools at the bar. I went over to him and asked what he would like to drink. The guy did not respond to me. I asked him what's up with the mask. He still didn't say anything back to me. I was confused about it and also kind of creeped out as well. After some awkward silence, the man just got up and walked out of the bar, just like that. Not going to lie, I was glad that he was gone, but I was still wondering what on earth that was all about. The bar was quiet for a little while, until a group of people came in. It was about 5 or 6 people who seemed to all be in a friend group. They came in and sat down together at the bar and ordered some drinks. The group was very nice and friendly, and as I was getting them drinks, we were all talking and stuff. Just as I was being taken count, sometime as I was getting them drinks and stuff, I remember I looked up and the masked man was back. He must have entered when I was making a drink or something because I hadn't noticed him coming in. He sat at the far end of the bar now. Once again, I had a bad feeling about him being here. The others at the bar noticed him too, but didn't say anything. Then the guy randomly got up and walked out again. The whole thing was pretty strange. The group of friends stayed for a while longer, and then all left. After them, we didn't get any more customers for the night. A while after that, it was time for closing, so I got up and locked the doors. I went to do some final things before I would leave for the night. I was turning off lights from signs and stuff and doing a little cleaning. During this time, the masked man returned again. He did not come inside, but he tried to. When he couldn't get into the building, he just stood there, looking at me through the window. I did my best to ignore him, and I went out of his sight for a while. When I came back, he was finally gone. When I left that night, I was worried that I would see him again, but luckily, I didn't. I was able to make it back home okay. And after that, I never saw the guy again. It was really weird though, and I still wonder about it sometimes. Breakups are tough, even when you know they're for the best. I'd been trying to keep myself together after splitting up with my boyfriend of 2.5 years. I don't really want to get into it. It wasn't messy or dramatic. We just weren't right for each other anymore. But that didn't make it any easier. Some days it felt like everything reminded me of him. I'd been forcing myself to stick to no contact, telling myself that it was the healthiest way for both of us to move on. It was hard though, really hard. One of the things I missed most about us was playing pool together. It was our thing. I'm a pretty decent player, definitely better than average, but my ex, he was incredible on his good days. He could pull off trick shots like it was nothing. 1 rail, 2 rail banks, kicks, combinations. I'm pretty sure he was even learning a standard miss. We each had pool tables at home, but obviously we're young, and staying inside every night wasn't exactly ideal. When we did go out, we always made sure that wherever we were going, usually a bar, had some pool tables. We hated crowded bars with long waits for tables and screaming patrons though, so the places we went were quieter, usually attracting an older crowd. Dive bars with old scuffed tables and sticky floors were our sweet spot. Obviously, you can't expect to find a regulation table in pristine condition at any bar, but the dive bars were definitely a better shout than rowdy college bars. We were usually the youngest people there, but we didn't care. At that point in our relationship, we had grown somewhat bored of the typical college let's get plastered every night mentality. Plus, even though I'm kind of shy, my ex was pretty charismatic and would get along with anyone. She taught me to use my intuition. Us not being total newbies at pool didn't hurt either. A few weeks ago, I found myself missing that part of my life more than usual. It was a random Wednesday though, so none of my friends were free. I didn't sit around the house feeling sorry for myself anymore, so I decided to head out to one of the bars we used to go to. I told myself it wasn't about nostalgia, that I just needed to get out. Believe me, I'm not the type of person, nor do I usually have the confidence to go out myself. But I was feeling some type of way that night, and so the bar was exactly the same as I remembered. Dim lighting, worn-out stools, a jukebox in the corner.
The familiarity was comforting, but it also stung. The memories came flooding back, and I almost turned around and left right then, but I forced myself to stay. After grabbing a few drinks, I wandered over to one of the pool tables and started idly chalking a cue. I'm not really sure what I was planning on doing there. Playing alone would have been a little odd. Luckily, my question was answered because a guy walked over. He was maybe in his mid-20s, the only person in the room even close to my age. He leaned against the table and asked if I was up for a game. I nodded and told him to rock him up. He put some money in the slot and started racking the balls. I laughed to myself as he racked them wrong, but I didn't say anything. We played a few rounds and I started to relax. He wasn't bad, not as good as my ex, but not terrible. I wasn't going easy on him though. I won every rack we played. We chatted as we played, and he even bought me a couple of drinks. He was friendly enough, but it quickly became clear he wasn't the brightest guy in the world. I like sharp and quick-witted guys who can hold their own in a conversation. This guy, not so much. Still, I didn't mind. It felt good to just play and talk and not overthink things for once. I was having a good time. After the 4th game, he popped the question, asking if I wanted to go back to his place. The question caught me off guard, but I guess I couldn't have been too shocked. I froze for a second before shaking my head. I tried to make it playful, saying he'd need a second date for that. In all honesty, I just didn't want to move so quickly. I guess I wouldn't have been totally opposed to taking things further with him, but a random Wednesday night wasn't the time for that. I guess I didn't do a good job turning him down, though, because his entire demeanor changed. His smile dropped and he literally started scowling at me. I was not prepared for what happened next. He said, "Are you serious?" I grabbed my wrist, saying something about spending all that money on those drinks. Before I could respond, he snatched my purse, too. I had never been in a situation like that, so instead of screaming or fighting, I just kind of froze up. Even though we were in a public place, I was still terrified. Luckily, a couple of older guys at the bar noticed what was happening and stepped in. I'm honestly not sure what I would have done had they not. One of them told the guy to let me go. The guy glared at me, muttered something under his breath, and threw my purse back onto the table before storming right out of the bar. My heart was still racing, and I thanked those guys profusely for helping me out. That was it for me, though. I called an Uber and left the bar, still kind of shocked and trying to process what had just happened. I decided to close my eyes in the Uber. I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I remember is the Uber driver gently waking me up.
We were parked across the street from my house. I thanked him, got out of the car, and started walking toward the door. As I rummaged through my bag for my keys, I impulsively checked my phone for the first time since leaving the bar. That's when I saw it. That god-awful notification. AirTag found moving with you. I nearly dropped my phone. Ugh. My hands started to shake as I rummaged through my purse, tossing aside my wallet and makeup until my fingers brushed against something unfamiliar. I pulled it out and stared in disbelief. There was literally an AirTag in my bag. A wave of panic hit me, way worse than what I was feeling earlier. I was still standing in the middle of the street, so I threw it on the ground and stomped on it a bunch of times until I was sure it was broken. I fought back a scream and started breathing heavily. The cold wasn't helping. I needed to get inside. I looked around frantically, but the street was completely empty. Whoever had planted the AirTag, probably that guy from the bar, would know exactly where I was. Maybe not my exact house, but the street for sure. The houses on my street are large and spaced out, so he'd definitely be able to narrow it down. I grabbed my purse and sprinted to the back door, fumbling with the lock before finally getting inside. I slammed the door behind me and locked it, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. I was safe, but I couldn't stop shaking. I walked up to my room, wondering how I had gotten myself into this mess. Normally, I'm asleep by 10 and out cold for 9 or 10 hours, but there was no way I was going to sleep that night. I looked out my bedroom window, thinking maybe the scenery would lull me to sleep or something. As I was looking out the window, kind of mindlessly, I noticed an old, beat-up Lincoln drive slowly past my house. Nothing too unusual, but it was kind of late for cars to be driving on a residential road. But then it came back from the opposite direction, and I knew something was wrong. It passed even slower the second time, like the driver was scanning the houses. I didn't want to face the reality of the situation, but when it passed a third time, I had no choice. It was the guy. It had to be. He was trying to find my house. I wanted to scream again. The next time the car passed, the driver's side window was rolled halfway down. I wanted to call the police, but I didn't want that guy to know he was in the right area. I know that doesn't make any sense, but I was so scared and couldn't think straight. The next time the car passed, the driver's hand was hanging out of the window, holding something. It looked like a knife, and then, instead of driving past, the car stopped in the middle of the road, right across from my house. I ducked down, my heart beating a million beats a minute again. I stayed there, crouched below the window, too terrified to move. By the time I looked up, the car was gone. I waited for what must have been an hour, but it didn't come back. The next morning, I told my parents everything. My dad scolded me for not calling the police, but I told him I was too scared to. He called a buddy of his, a police chief, to ask for advice. His friend said there wasn't much they could do without more evidence or the car's plate number, which I hadn't been able to see. His friend told us to call the police immediately should we ever see that car again. I didn't leave the house for days. Even now, I'm really scared that he's waiting somewhere, and he's gonna see me enter or exit my house again. I haven't seen the car since though, so maybe the nightmare is over. I don't have the most exciting life, but it's comfortable. I'm 40, single, no kids. Some people might find that depressing, but honestly, I don't mind. I've got a steady job, a decent house, and no one to answer to but myself. I work as a bartender at a high-end luxury rooftop in a neighboring town, catering to the kind of clientele who think regular bars are beneath them. I don't live anywhere near that level of luxury myself. My place is in a pretty middle-of-the-pack neighborhood, about 20 minutes away. But working there has its perks. Charismatic and cute. It's the restaurant I work in now that is both my house and my work. The tips are amazing. People in that area aren't shy about throwing money around, and the rotating crowd keeps things interesting. Since the bar is upscale, we don't have the typical regulars you find in a dive. I like that. I never quite liked how close some customers would get with me, or any other bartender for that matter. Maybe that's just me though. I like to keep to myself. I should probably mention that my name's Kevin. That'll be important later. It was a Friday night, our busiest night. The place was packed as usual, with groups of friends clinking glasses, couples on date nights, and a few folks who probably wandered in just to feel important. I always like playing a mental game with my patrons. I try to figure out which ones are pretending to be something they're not. You can tell a lot about people by the way they order a drink. The ones who ask for complicated cocktails are usually trying to impress someone. The ones who order a whiskey neat, they've had a day. I had my eye on a couple at the end of the bar who were down to their last sips of wine. It's always better to offer a refill before they wave you down. The two clients waited until we left before they offered to reply, but my head was buzzing. The next thing I realized, the client had been here. I was in my groove, mixing drinks and chatting with customers, when I noticed someone walk in who definitely looked out of place. I clocked the guy immediately. He was clenching his teeth and scowling like he was furious. He had jet black hair that wasn't combed and sat like a bird's nest on his forehead. He was wearing a blank black hoodie under a faded leather jacket, which looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. There were stains all over it, but none of that was as unsettling as his face. Like I said, he just looked so angry, he made a beeline for the bar. But he didn't sit down. He just stood there, staring at me. I wondered to myself how he had gotten past the doorman in the lobby. I cleared my throat and asked if I could get him something to drink, trying to keep my tone neutral despite the weird vibe he was giving off. He didn't answer right away, which was strange. He just kept glaring at me, like he was getting ready to swing. Finally, he muttered that he wanted a double shot of Jaeger. I nodded, grabbed a glass, and poured the shot. Jaeger isn't a drink we pour often here. Most of our patrons are likely to ask for something a little higher quality. But hey, if someone wants Jaeger, I'm not about to question their taste. I set the glass in front of him and moved on to serve a few other patrons. When I came back to charge him, he tossed crumpled cash onto the counter. That also threw me off. Hardly anyone pays in cash at this place. Again, though, it wasn't my place to judge. The guy didn't say anything as I rang him up, and I was ready to move on when he spoke again. I still remember his exact words. "I knew I'd find you here, Kevin." I froze. My eyes snapped to his as I scrambled to process what he'd just said. I put the glass in my hand down and demanded to know how he knew my name. I didn't want to make a scene, so I kept my voice low, but I hoped he got the gist of how serious I was. He didn't answer my question, just stared at me with the same angry intensity. Finally, he said, "I know what you did." Before I could ask him what he meant, he turned and walked towards the elevators. I wanted to yell something or chase after him, but I decided against it. I was on the clock. I couldn't just neglect my job. Instead, I just stood there for a moment, completely thrown off. I was honest to God confused out of my mind. I didn't recognize him in the slightest. I couldn't think of anything I had done that would warrant such a cryptic statement. I'm no saint, but I don't go around making enemies. My mind helped. It put me in a sour mood for the rest of the night. When my shift finally ended, I drove home, but I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened earlier. I racked my brain for literally any explanation that made sense, but couldn't think of any. By the time I ended up going to bed, I was still relatively unsettled by the whole thing. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up randomly. I wasn't really sure what woke me up, as I didn't have to go to the bathroom, and I'm usually the type of person to sleep through the night. I didn't hear or see anything, but something felt off. Without moving, I kept my eyes open, waiting for them to adjust to the darkness. After about a minute, I saw something that gave me an adrenaline rush of fear. There was a dark mass in the corner of my room, next to the door. It was just standing there, but I was 100% sure it was something that didn't belong in my room. I felt my heart start to race, but I forced myself to stay still, pretending to still be asleep. Someone was in my room. I repeated that thought to myself like 6 times before truly processing it. I knew I had to do something. I counted silently to 3, and in one quick motion I sprang out of bed, screaming like a crazy person. I was prepared for a fight, but the figure didn't come toward me. Instead, he bolted for the door. As he moved, I heard something clatter to the floor. I chased after him through my house, but by the time I reached the front door, it was wide open, and whoever had been in my room was gone. I wanted to run out into the yard to look for him, but I was worried that I'd be walking directly into a trap. Instead, I made what I still think is the smart decision and slammed the door shut and locked it. I thought back to the clatter I had heard earlier in my room, and that last part made me smart for the first time. My heart beat faster. By that point, my heart beating faster still. From there, I walked back to my bedroom, turned on the light, and froze. In the corner of the room, there was a knife, just laying there on the floor. It was one of mine, taken from the kitchen. I felt sick. Whoever I had just chased was planning to hurt me, possibly kill me. I called the police right after that, and they quickly arrived and searched both my house and my yard, but found nothing. I gave a description of the man from the bar, and the police got the video footage from my bar, but they haven't been able to find him yet, because I haven't heard anything. You'd think they might have seen him? The thing that freaks me out the most is that I know for a fact I had locked all my doors that night. All doors. I locked them every night. During their search, though, the police were never able to figure out how that man entered my house. None of the windows were broken or unlocked, and there was no sign of forced entry. To this day, I still have no idea how he got inside. I haven't seen him since, but I would be lying if I said I don't think about this encounter often. I work as a bartender at a bar and restaurant in a suburb just outside Baltimore. I'll do my best to explain the layout so the story makes sense. It's a busy place with a unique setup. There are no waiters, just bartenders like me and the cooks in the back. If you want to find food or non-alcoholic drinks, you have to order them at the bar, and when everything's ready, you grab it from the counter. I'm not sure why things are done that way, but I guess it had something to do with management being cheap and trying to avoid hiring waiters. Either way, it keeps things fast-paced, which I actually like. For whatever reason, the place is really popular, even though I personally don't think it's anything super special. The atmosphere is lively most nights, with great music, a buzzing crowd, and a standing area near the DJ booth where people gather to dance and chat. The constant flow of customers and the high-energy vibe make the job fly by. I love meeting and talking to new people, so the gig is perfect for me. I would probably lose my mind if I had to wait long periods of time between serving guests, but that's just me. I bet some people are the opposite. That particular night started off like any other. It was a weekend, so things were going to be super busy. I was ready. After a certain time, the bar started filling up with people. It looked like more of a younger college crowd that night, which meant more dancing, more spilling, and a rowdier environment in general. Oh yeah, and worse tips, which kind of sucked for me. This one group of kids just kept on ordering round after round of tequila shots, faster than I could line up the salt and limes. It's always chaos when they take over the bar. One of them was so plastered he used the same pickup line on me like 3 times. I was running around doing my thing when I noticed an elderly couple walk in and sit down at the booth in the corner of the restaurant. At first glance, there was nothing strange about them. I just thought it was interesting that 2 people that age would want to come into a rowdy place like this. Didn't have too much time to think about it though, so I went back to work. Fast forward maybe 30 minutes to an hour. I was halfway through pouring a line of gin and tonics when I noticed the couple again. My hands kept working, muscle memory taking over, but my brain was stuck on them for some reason. That's when it hit me. They were just sitting there motionlessly. They hadn't ordered anything either, so why the heck were they sitting there? No food and definitely not any drinks I would have remembered. I looked a little closer and realized that they weren't even looking at each other. They were both fixated at the wall next to them. From what I could tell, it didn't look like they were talking either. It was the strangest thing. I was beyond curious, but the bar was slant, and I had too much to do to spend time wondering about it. I figured they might be waiting for someone or didn't realize how the place worked. Maybe they were waiting for a waiter to take their order. When I finally had a break, I decided to check on them myself. I walked over to the table and put on my most polite smile. As I approached, neither of them turned to face me. They were both still staring at the wall like statues. I cleared my throat and asked them if they wanted anything to eat or drink. The woman didn't even flinch. She kept staring at the wall like I hadn't spoken at all. The man turned his head slowly, like he was moving in slow motion. When his face came into view, I felt a chill run through me. His skin was pale and wrinkled, and his eyes were almost sunken into his face completely. He didn't speak, just stared at me and shook his head once, firmly but silently. Something about the way he looked at me made my stomach twist. I muttered something in response and quickly returned to the bar. I had the weirdest feeling in my gut after that. Those people looked like they didn't even belong in this century, let alone this bar. I didn't look over at that booth for a long time. Eventually, things started to die down a little, and I remembered the couple. I glanced over impulsively and I nearly dropped the glass I was holding. Both of them were staring directly at me now. I made direct eye contact with the woman, but she never averted her gaze. I don't think I'd ever been more uncomfortable at my job than I was in that moment. I looked away and pretended to be busy, trying not to freak out completely. By the time I glanced back again, the booth was empty. I was relieved. I was just glad that they were gone, as mean as that sounds. By the end of the night, I was still thinking about the whole thing. As I wiped down the bar and closed up with my coworker Karen, I decided to ask her if she saw anything strange. She's, I guess, what you would call a vet. She's been working there for years and prides herself on noticing everything and everyone that comes through the doors. When I asked her about the couple, she gave me a confused look and said she didn't know what I was talking about. I looked at her blankly and told her I was talking about the elderly couple that was sitting in the corner booth. She shook her head and told me she didn't remember seeing anyone like that. She then jokingly asked me if I was hallucinating, which got a playful laugh out of me, but on the inside though, I was losing it. I knew what I had seen. I asked her if she was sure, and she crossed her arms before listing at least 10 random people who had ordered food that night and what they were wearing. I laughed again and complimented her memory, but like I said before, I was dying on the inside. Come to find out, by the time we locked up, I started doubting myself. As I walked to my car, I noticed something that made me nearly drop my keys in fear. Across the street, there were 2 dark figures standing under a lone street light. I knew it was them. I wanted to scream, but the sound wouldn't come. I didn't wait another second. I jumped into my car, locked the doors, and sped out of the lot without another look. The drive home was awful. I was trying not to break down the whole time. I just kept repeating, "Oh my God," over and over. I had so many questions. Had Karen somehow missed them? Were those people even real? Was I going insane? I couldn't explain it. I thought I was going crazy. I wish this story had a resolved ending, but it doesn't. I never saw those people again. I never got any kind of explanation. I don't think I ever will.